Welcome everyone to our episode 121. On today's episode, I have my favorite guest, Natasha Rocha, and we are going to discuss a very interesting topic that right now I think it's going to fit for everyone because there is a lot of stress, of overwhelm, of burnout, and this phase that we are now adjusting to needs to be embraced from another perspective. So, the topic that we are going to talk today is release and renew, navigating the journey of letting go. Mhm. Thank you, Natasha, for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be here and to have these conversations with you
Yeah.
and everybody else that joins us. It's wonderful to be here. And very, very timely with the eclipse having recently happened as well and all the hype around that. I don't know how you felt about it, but I felt a lot of my clients were asking me what's going on because there was a lot of kind of like media around it, a lot of kind of like felt very kind of COVID-ish in the scaring of what
Yes.
was coming in with the getting water and all sorts of stuff. And it also felt very similar to the energy of 2012 when we thought the world was going to come to an end. There was this 3 days of darkness that was pushing in, and I just kept getting like ignore all the media, just really step in, just really kind of like ground yourself, just really become into observation as to what feelings and emotions are surfacing up for you in order to allow them to let go. And yeah, it was very much a big time, I feel, of, and a lot of people talked about going through a portal, which I understand and I agree with, in a sense of moving from one time and space into another. The vibrational frequency of the planet quite shifted. And it's quite interesting because I woke up the next morning feeling something feels different, don't quite know what it is, but
Yeah.
something feels different. Almost kind of like a new year. You know, when you wake up on the 1st of January and it's like, this is a new year, it has a new energy that came in with it. Um, yeah, and I think it was very important to let go of the limitations in order to step into this new year, really for us. I don't know, how did you feel about that?
Well, I agree in many aspects because I also felt like more or less the previous week to the eclipse, I start feeling a little bit of stressed, a little bit of like that sensation of burnout, and I couldn't sleep well that all that week. And
Hmm.
so I, when I start thinking, because I really forgot about the date of
Yeah.
the eclipse, and I was just listening to some friends, and I said, "Oh, it's already this Monday." Probably that's why I'm feeling like that, no? Because this
Hmm.
is like the accumulation of one cycle of energy that has to close and then give birth to a new cycle, which is
Absolutely.
perfect to the title that we chose. We have
Hmm.
to renew every time and then every season we should renew and we should move like nature. And
Absolutely.
and I believe that this week was completely different. I felt much more with energy, with
Hmm.
new ways of approaching things and new ways of trying to just be more compassionate about the things that are happening in my life and that the ones that that need to start being released and let go
Hmm.
of them. and and the new one, because whenever we let go something, whatever if it is emotional, if it is something that it's a work thing that you are doing, a project, whatever it is in your life, when we let go that energy, when we let go those projects, we open space. So
Hmm.
that's the feeling that you have already now space and you can embrace more, no?
Absolutely. Yeah, what I talk about a lot of the times is sometimes we cheat on our future with our past, because we're holding on to things in our past, right? So it doesn't, that's creating space. Once we let go of what's no longer serving us, it actually opens up space to allow for those things that we want to come in as well. I have another business called the Octopus Method, and in that we talk about like a rule of thirds. One third is leaving, one third is staying, one third is coming in, and it's a cycle that we constantly moving through, mentally, emotionally, physically, constantly in this pattern of change and cycles. And that's very interesting. For the Earth is a planet of cycles, which is it becomes very much. I mean, looking at the seasons and all the directions, it's like absolutely. And we also tend to repeat history quite often. So it's definitely a planet of cycles. And I think with this cycle that's coming in, it was really an opportunity to let go of some of the other cycles that weren't serving us, to create new patterns and new discoveries within humanity and the collective consciousness aspect of it. And you're absolutely right. The so many people, and I know for sure so a lot of my clients and myself feeling exhausted by the end of it. It's almost like finishing running that marathon of that cycle. And you're like, okay, I've done it, I've completed it, and I'm letting it go. But what am I doing to bring in new things as well? And what am I doing to completely release? Because sometimes when we let go of a situation, a person, or something, there's this grieving period that happens from that cycle that were living in, that we were in before. And I think it's very important to feel those feelings 100% in order to let them go as well. And I think that's a big part of letting go and releasing, is allowing, accepting this is where we're at, accepting the situation instead of resisting it, and then allowing things to like say, okay, today's the day I let it go. I'm done with it. I'm finished grieving it, but I felt it 100%, which I think is important.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that part of grieving, because we associate grieving just with the passing of someone, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be like that. We are always kind of grieving things, because life, as you mentioned, is changing, is season, is it's inevitable that you are going to lose some things and you are going to have new things or people in your life that you also have to let them go, because sometimes they are not um, in the same frequency of energy. And
Absolutely.
that is sometimes hard to understand, because you say, well, I had a friendship of 12 years, 10 years with this person, and now it's really difficult to have a conversation with them, or to look for them, even to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And well, you just have to accept that people also are moving through cycles of energy, and sometimes you don't match with those kind of people, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the times it's like, what have I done wrong? And it's never, it's allowing them to go through their process and honoring yourself and going through yours as well. That becomes quite important. And it's quite interesting because I was listening to a talk of a gentleman called Daryl Anker, and he channels a being called Bashar. And
Mhm.
one thing that he said really resonated with me is that life has no meaning. We give meaning to life. We make things mean something. We make things be joyous or dreadful. We give meaning to
Yeah.
a lot of the situations and the circumstances in life. And it was like absolutely, it's like because we live according to our perspectives, our perceptions, our values, our knowledge, our and we tackle events in life with the same kind of, but we're the ones who give meaning to that, which is quite interesting. So we have the power to let it go as well and give it another meaning. And from that perspective, it's really looking at how is this working out for me, really, and that helps us to let things go as well, and kind of like, how is the situation serving me, no matter how traumatic it is, no matter whether it's, how is it working for me, how is it, what am I learning from it, like, what are
Hmm.
the benefits of going through this, is quite important to also look at, because sometimes once we understand the why am I going through this, what is the life lesson, how am I in observation of myself and responding to this, once we once that sets in and once that clicks, the whole situation changes and it releases and it lets go, because it no longer needs to exist anymore, because that frequency, we've overcome it, we've learned from it, and we've moved on.
Yeah.
And if we haven't, we create the pattern that it will show us again, where we end up going, how am I in this position once again? Because we haven't completely connected in, learned from it, let go, and let go completely. There's still a thread that's holding on to that, whether it's manifesting something, whether it's a type of person, whether it's a type of job, or whether you find that same frequency in your job, in your home, and in your relationships. It's beautiful to witness. It's exciting.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because something like that happened in my life, and I was just trying to reflect why is this happening with particularly or specifically with my daughter, and something that I am struggling with accepting the way she handles or she cares about the school system and learning and all of those things. And for me, it's a very different perspective, and for her, it's just not so important or not important at all sometimes. So, and that for me is a shock to the way I am, to everything that I have just set my identity into. But as you mentioned, sometimes we give meaning to life, and well, not sometimes, we always give meaning to life, but we are also used to give meaning to life because of the patterns, because of the examples, because of the program that we received. And many
Absolutely.
of the society program says school is important. You have to do it perfectly well, and you have to be always um, responsible in terms of going out and getting good grades and all of those things. And you just ask yourself, why? Why do you have to be like that if you don't like that way? If you don't really now resonate with the way the school system still is
Mhm.
archaic, no? In terms of,
Yeah, and it might have served us well when we were in school, but there's a lot of beings that are being born now that are more advanced, and you're starting to see a lot of uh, kids with dyslexia, or a couple of kind of like different Asperger's. Also, these are children of the future, and the schooling system doesn't is only one way of teaching, which is quite interesting. And we hold on to that because that has been ingrained in us, right? Whereas the newer teachers are in more with the times. I mean, my kids get iPads at school. Where did we even think? We didn't even have cell phones when I was in school. So the technology has advanced so much, the tools are there. So their systems are working very, very different, right? And the way of teaching needs to shift. And I think that's what's happening at the moment on the planet is our foundational systems are kind of like being put under pressure. Um, the way we do our corporate life, the way we do, our education, medicine, it's like everything is shifting. We're starting to see where the limitations are of the old systems. It doesn't mean that they were wrong. It just means that they need to update to the modern systems now, right? We need to look at letting go of those old systems, because I worked in the oil and gas industry, and it was very much, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there's different ways of doing this that are better for the environment, better for the people that are working, better for so many things, right? And it's kind of like, it's not about breaking the system, is perhaps not working as well as it could be, but it's bringing into that modernizing and moving with the times. But in that sense, we need to let go of some of the structures that we are, you know,
used
that we
to.
hold on to. that we're used to. And the reason we hold on to it is because it's what we know. It keeps us safe.
Exactly. Yeah. It
The
is.
fear of the unknown. Is it going to work? Isn't it? Who knows?
Exactly. And that's a discussion that I have had with my wife, because she thinks that it's going to work and she has to stay in that system, and I keep trying to for her to see another vision of how can we educate better, and how we can make these new human beings that are coming, like your children, my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
that they they can learn in a completely different way, where they are independent, where they look for the information, where we train them and teach them to ask more for what they want, for what
Mm-hmm.
they feel, for what they are passionate, for what they have skills for,
Mm-hmm.
and all of those things, they are not being asked in the school system, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just established the way it is, and that's the way it's gonna be until someone dares to launch a new system, no?
Absolutely.
And that,
Absolutely. And especially with the schooling system as well, they we're very much taught to go to school, get good grades, leave school, get a good job, leave the house. It's not necessarily being taught to entrepreneur, to create new things, to go out and venture, to start things. Like that is starting to change. That is, and I think that is definitely starting to change in many ways. So hopefully, but again, these systems are big wheels that take time. But I think the collective energy is definitely there in a sense of needing change. Um, and with change comes a lot of letting go of old processes, letting go. Why does it have to be one way and not another? I mean, look at it. We all worked from home for 2 years of our lives. That completely changed the whole, system, right?
yeah,
It's yeah, and we know that it works, but we had to embrace it. And I think that's what the younger generations are much better at adapting to newness, which is why technology, I think, has just like shifted so quickly, is because the adaptability of those that are using it, whereas the older generations are still rejecting it a little bit. Whereas the younger generations, it's almost like they come out of the womb with a freaking iPad and knowing how to program stuff. Which is wonderful, but but that's morphic resonance. But perhaps that's another discussion on another day. But it's yeah, the younger generations are so apt to change, um, which is just is interesting.
yeah, and big part of this letting go phrase and letting go technique that you can apply in your life is also to feel the emotions that the thing that you need to let go is provoking you. No,
Hmm.
we take those pauses and time, and we have time to reflect and think, well, why is this bothering me? Why is this system or my daughter not seeing the same way that I watch school, or it was for me, is bothering me? And whenever you ask those kind of emotions, you say, well, this because I think that things can be done different in my
Hmm.
own way of watching things. But
Yeah.
what about her way? What about how she sees the things? So
Hmm.
when we let go of trying to the world to answer in the same way that you respond,
Yeah.
that's when we kind of crash and have this stuck emotion. And when we start dissolving the emotion and understanding why is this happening, what is the lesson, as you mentioned, we have to look for the
Hmm.
lesson on the emotion, on the thing that is happening, on the interaction. That's when we start asking deeper questions, and we arrive to the answer that it is not our life. Many
Hmm.
times it is not our life to decide on anyone. and we can just control as much as we give meaning to life, we also can just control our own life, and
Absolutely.
sometimes not even to the extent that we want. But in many ways we can control how we feel, and start asking more and more questions until we get to the root cause, and until we kind of allow that emotion to be felt. And
Hmm.
then when we feel that emotion, when we really have time to do that, we kind of dissolve the energy and let the energy move, and let the energy move on to the next thing, no?
Absolutely. Um, yeah, because emotion is energy in motion. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times through doing craniosacral therapy, a lot of the times we suppress those because for whatever reasons we tend to suppress, or we taught to suppress them. And it actually creates what we call an energy cyst
Mm.
in our system, like in the fascia, and eventually starts to accumulate, or it surfaces later on in life, right? Those patterns of suppressing certain things shows up later on in life to deal with. And I think that's why it's important in feeling your feelings 100% and then allowing them to let go, observing them. Why am I feeling this way? What am I making it mean? What am I making the situation mean? It's the story we tell ourselves. And you're right, they're based on the filters that are being passed down by society, or by our parents, or by our culture. And that's very, very important to realize that, is this mine or is this somebody else's? Is it a subconscious pattern that I have been carrying for a very long time? And it's quite interesting, especially even going down the healing journey, in working through as being healers in one way or another, wanting to fix everything, or wanting to make everybody kind of like better, because that's why people come to us. But it's also, I think, experience has taught me that the journey really is about letting go of the outcome, because you can't control that. You're there to supply the vibrational frequency of healing, but it's the patient, or the client that needs to accept it. So even that, it's letting go from that outcome, because you can only go as far as the client is willing to go. The same with our own healing. We're only able to go as far as we willing to believe we can,
Mhm.
and to release as well. So it's letting go of that outcome. I found, as working in the holistic healing aspect, is going, okay, I see it more as a curiosity, and kind of like, let's provide the ideal environment or the frequency for healing, and how can I support you through that? And it's a journey of walking side by side. And I think we've been taught very much to control everything, because we want a certain outcome. And that's where letting go of the how it happens becomes quite important, in the sense of, okay, this is what I want to achieve, this is where I want to go, allowing the opportunities to then surface to that, and taking advantage of those opportunities is important, in the sense of consciously manifesting what it is that we want to create, but releasing the control, because we've so used to, especially like, I grew up in Africa as a woman, like, and I worked with engineers. I used to work for a civil engineer doing imports and exports, and if we wanted something, we had to push to get to what we wanted. We couldn't, like, we used whatever tactics like that we needed to get to what we wanted, but we were controlling how we would get there. Where I found that shifting very much from the corporate world into more doing things kind of like consciously, or is that collaboration and that co-creation of making life happen, instead of forcing it to happen, and working out the how, and very, very structured. Yes, we need structure. Yes, we need planning. Yes, we need action. Yes, we need thought. But a lot of the times we restrict ourselves, because we only see one way of creating it. Whereas there's multiple ways that things can be created, and sometimes you might get better opportunities that you weren't even expecting before either. So it's letting go of that control, letting go sometimes of very strict structures and processes. When I worked in the IT industry, we used to have processes because you need them. But one thing that my boss used to say is you need to leave time for agility and flexibility to respond to anomalies that are out there. So you need to come in and make sure that the processes aren't so structured that they're able to change. So it's when we were doing our KPIs, so it's quite interesting in looking at letting go of many things, but there's certain things we still need to kind of like action in order to move forward, which is important.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of information to unpack in what you said,
I
because
suppose.
also, yes, I mean, in my own life, and as you narrated, I think that
Hmm.
our own lives are the best example that we have to let go, because under the evolution lens, when you start looking to your life through your past, you see the whole different changes that you suffered, and that you have to surpass, and you have to overcome, and you have to
Hmm.
understand, and many areas. I mean, that's what I pick up from your story, and it's
Hmm.
very similar to the one that I lived also, because I was also incorporate in the pharma industry, and
Hmm.
we also had to be very square with the SOPs and the procedures
Yeah.
and all of those things that had to be followed, and you didn't have any room for creativity. And many times in those years, I felt wasted in terms of the things that I wanted to create, of my brain feeling like fogged and
Hmm.
stuck, because I had to think in the procedure way, and I had
Hmm.
to do what the procedure says, and I didn't have any room to think. So you start becoming, many many times people start becoming lazy, and
Hmm.
they just start becoming mechanical, and they just do things without thinking. They are just
Hmm.
in automatic mode, and their lives also start reflecting that automatic mode, and that's why
Mm.
they live in those wheels, like capture, and they just crave and crave for the weekend to come, so that they can do something, and when the weekend arrives they don't know what to do, because they don't have creativity to do many things.
Hmm.
And the
It's
life goes on like that, and it can goes on like, and until they start letting go simple things and little things, and
hmm.
start adding more creativity into their lives, even though they still can manage to do the mechanical work.
Yeah.
Add something more to their lives, so that they can have more variety, more creativity, more room and flexibility to do what they want. No?
Absolutely. And that's a big thing. Once you get into that wheel, we start to forget who we are.
Yeah.
We start to forget what we enjoy. And because there's very much a people pleasing or kind of pattern that comes in, or needing to do things one way or another, or being told what to do constantly. And a lot of the times it starts to create fear once we get used to that
Mm.
wheel, because we're afraid to think for ourselves in case we get it wrong. And then those processes keep us safe and keep us, in that space, and that's what we know. So we continue to be in this wheel because we know what it. In Portuguese, we say we know how much money this house wastes. We know the budget of this house. We know how it runs. We know how it ticks, and that's what it is. But it's yeah, it gets to a stage where we become very mechanical like, and we start to lose that humanness, even kind of like working for 60 years of our lives to perhaps maybe enjoy the last 10 years of our lives. And then when we get to that, we don't know what we enjoy anymore. And it's important, and it's letting go of the fear of making the changes, letting go of the fear of doing what you enjoy. It's do it anyway,
Yeah.
right? It's one of those things, and it's funny because a lot of the times in the Akashic records, my clients are told to get used to being uncomfortable because that's where that expansion is, right? And to let go of the fear. And the only way to do it is to do what makes you uncomfortable, and a lot of the times as well. So, for example, public speaking, like, oh, I still get nervous when I'm in front of people. Um, I've actually joined the Theosophical Society here in Edinburgh, and they let me do some presentations, and that's helping me a lot. But if I were to just remain within that, I have to let go of the fear and do it anyway, right? It's that pushing ourselves to step out of our comfort zone is important, and it's letting go of what it means. It's letting go of making a mistake. It's letting go of judging ourselves constantly in this repeat. When I was close to burnout a few times in corporate as well, and most of the times I was up at the middle of the night trying to problem solve and trying to reflect. Maybe it's just a woman thing because men seem to sleep all night, but trying
No.
to reflect on everything that I've done, throughout the day. Could I have done it differently? Could I have done it better? And we're in this rat race, and it's judgmental, constantly judging ourselves in that sense. And understanding where we went wrong is important, or what I don't necessarily believe in wrong, but it's like what we've done that we could do better. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's just understanding, okay, I've been doing this for the last all my life. It doesn't serve anymore. I see the pattern. I see where I've created it. Now, how do I change that? And it's before I beat myself up for months thinking I'm such a horrible person because I did this, this, and this. And the negative talk that you'd come in, the criticism was just insane. And then it got to a stage was like, I had to get to a stage where I was like, okay, I did it. That's what I was doing it. That's all I knew. Now I know better. I'm going to change it from this moment onwards. I'm going
That,
to change my behavior, my thought process, and my emotions and my words attached to it. It's the only thing. Yesterday's gone. I can't change that, but I can change who I am today. And that was another process that I got from the Akashic Records. It's not about the past. The past, use it for knowledge and wisdom. It's grown you. It's made you who you are today. But you're not that person anymore. So it's like draw a line. Who do you want to be? And start behaving in that way moving forward. So even us, we're letting go of older versions of ourselves, which is important to also let go. And it's not even necessarily letting go, but incorporating that aspect into you. Not about rejecting it, but accepting. Yes, this is who I was. This is what I did. This is fine. That's what I knew at that time, and I'm just going to incorporate that into who I am today. But I'm going to use it to change who I am today and who I'm becoming tomorrow.
yeah. And
I think is important.
I was just also thinking about something that happened in my family with one of my aunts. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
she's 89 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and she was kept in her house due to this COVID fear,
Mm-hmm.
and she was not moving too much, and she was not getting sun, and she was just listening to news, and now she's completely deteriorated, and she aged in these just 3 years what she could have aged in 10 more. uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking with her because she was very anxious, and she had an episode of hypertension, and I just told her, well, you are like this right now because you are watching news too much time, and you are
Yeah.
watching them and listening to that crap, and it's just ruminating in your mind, and you are just overthinking, and as you mentioned, we just need one little thought so that we trigger the inner critic,
Mm-hmm.
and the inner thoughts and the fear.
Yeah.
So imagine if we watch news 3 or 4 hours every day, and if we don't have sunlight, and if we don't have air, and if we don't move our bodies, and if we
Mm.
start exercising in spite of the age that we can have, no?
Yeah.
And that's that's what happens with many people, that whenever they um, retire from their work,
Yeah.
because they are used to living in the way that the work told them to do. But once they got out of that hamster cage, they
Hmm.
don't know what to do with their lives, because they were used to not thinking what they wanted to do. They were
Hmm.
just trained and programmed to answer, and to respond to what they were asked for. And if no
Yeah.
one is asking them now, if no one
Hmm.
is telling them now what to do, the creativity is already gone, and they don't have a purpose. So when they lose that purpose, they start deteriorating and activating many of the substances, many of the metabolic pathways that are going to
Mm.
create a disease,
Yeah.
because your body needs to respond to action, needs to respond to movement, needs to respond to balance. And the
Hmm.
balance is not in a job. The job is not the balance. The balance
Mm.
is created by you. As much as we create the meaning, we also create everything in our bodies. And I just wrote an article like 2 weeks ago about how the cells
Hmm.
are communicating in chemical messages, and they are replicating what the universe does in terms of the small particles, small packets of energy that
Hmm.
are being communicated through the universe. And those are the ones that you pick up when you breathe and when you connect with the
Hmm.
Akashic records.
Yes.
And this is the same that our bodies are doing all the time. And they are trying to give you this balance, this homeostatic. And when I was writing that article, I almost cried, because I said, why we don't pay more attention to our bodies? Why we
Mm.
take for granted what they do, and how they communicate, and how we just have to see inside
Hmm.
and learn learn how it is done, learn how there is no comparison, there is no envy, there is no anything. It is just sharing and working together, and trying to give a balance. And if we learn from the cells, and if we learn from our bodies, we would be a society completely different.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And yeah, the power of our thought on our body is so interesting. I'll take my mom, for example, and she's pretty healthy, but she's like, oh, I'm at my age, my body's going to start giving out anytime. And I'm like, stop saying that, because you're making that happen. It doesn't have to be that way. She's like, oh, but I'm in my 70s, so that has to. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. You're making it so. Stop wishing that into existence. And I think that's also quite important is the words that we use have their own vibrational frequency that our body is listening to and responding to constantly. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. So it's letting go of some of those old belief systems that really don't work, and really starting to create new cycles of life, because we are every I love mornings. Okay, some people think I'm nuts, but I absolutely love mornings. And I think I love mornings and I love Mondays. And I think it's because for me, it's the newness of the week. It's the newness of the day. It's the opportunity to start a new cycle, to be better than what I was the day before. It's that clean slate. Every morning I wake up and I'm like, yes, another day to try this again. What magic and miracles am I going to witness today? And it's setting that tone for the day of setting up, but it's that letting go of how it needs to show up as well, and be in that space of observation and curious of like, how is it going to show up? Not how am I going to make it happen? It's how is it that I'm going to, what is going to show up, like, in that curiosity, and then reflecting on it at the end of the day. But it's every day, every minute, every breath we take is a new beginning. And it's an opportunity for rebirthing, for recycling, for renewing, for recreating who we are. But it's also about letting go of what's no longer serving us, and embracing the totality of what we are. I mean, you've just talked about proving that on a molecular level, we are the universe, and the universe is reflected within us. Why don't we step into that power and own it and
Yeah.
become the universe? Like, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, let's own it. Let's be it. Let's understand who we are. Let go of the limitations that we've been placed on us, and let's step into the aspect of creator that we are.
Yeah, let's have more curiosity for
Mm.
what is happening inside of us. I was thinking about the body again, and how can you imagine if our bodies say one day, well, today you are not going to go to the bathroom because I don't want to let go. I just want to keep stuck that emotion and those substances, and I just keep intoxicating myself. Just picture that. Imagine 2 days, imagine 3 days. It would be a chaotic and very dangerous disease, and you would be probably have to be taken to surgery if you didn't let go, and if you didn't, well, just go to the bathroom and
Yeah.
do your detoxification of the things that you ate. So
Hmm.
we need to do the same. We need to detoxify. We need to go to the bathroom, emotional bathrooms, let's say. Every day we
Yeah.
have to go to the emotional bathroom and let go of those emotions and allow them to be felt and allow them
Yeah.
to question a little bit. I know that is sometimes daunting for many people, and they are afraid of what that emotion will represent. Uh,
Hmm.
but you need to start in at some place, and you need to start
Yeah.
small. You need to start small with simple things that you can just write down and have a diary for yourself, and write them down or record them if you don't like to write. And that's the beginning of a healing journey. So that's what I suggest to my aunt, and I told her, well, you know what, I'm going to come here, and you are going to talk with me about your life, because we are going to write a book about your life, so that you keep busy, so that you keep writing. And she told me excuses, of course, that she couldn't write, and her hands. And I told her, yes, because you are not using your hands, because you are
Yeah.
not allowing movement. It's going to be painful, yes, but you can do it. And
Hmm.
the more you practice, the more you do it, the more your muscles are going to get back into the next years that you can live. And if you are tired, whenever you start moving, well, you at some point you are just going to transition in the next stage, but
Yeah.
you are going to be at peace. You are
Hmm.
not going to transition with fear. You are not going to transition with an imbalance or a disease. You are just going to
Yeah.
go peacefully, you know?
Yeah. 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 No, our body, if you want to change the external world, it has to start within. And like you say, every journey starts with looking within, reflecting. This really is a journey of getting to know who we are.
It is. It is.
Really, and everybody's a mirror to us, is a reflection of one thing or another. whether it's something that we are or something that we aspire to be or something that we need to look at, like look at the shadow aspect of us. I mean,
Mhm.
it's uncomfortable sometimes when our shadows are triggered, but it's there's so much gratitude for that, because once you look at it and observe it and move on from it, it tends to to help us. It helps us to expand. It helps us to grow. It releases those limitations, and I feel that we become more tolerant and more compassionate as well. The more healing work that we do, the more we understand, the less we judge others for going through what they've been going through as well. And the easier it is to let go of the hurts or the bad moods. Like, I'm living with two teenagers sometimes, and sometimes they're going through all their emotions. And it's like I say to them, look, I understand you're upset right now. I don't deserve that behavior. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to help you right here. And then they have a kind of like, okay, it's a realization. Okay, wait a minute. Maybe I'm being a bit of a jerk. And then sometimes I am the jerk, and they're like, mom, it's not fair. You can't do this, this, and this. Like, and then it's easier to receive those kinds of criticisms, or are they're not even they just expressions. It doesn't necessarily, it's just like, okay, I'm sorry, I realized, I'm going to change, or I agree, or I don't agree, whatever it is. But it makes it, once you've done a bit of the hard work, this ego will always show up, but
Mm.
it's stepping outside of that part of ego and going, okay, what do I need? What is this showing me? How can I move on from this?
Uh,
What is the lesson in this? And you know how you were talking about how we look back and we kind of like see how everything's led us to where we are. When we're going through stuff, I usually find that when I ask the question, how is this working for me? It
mhm.
helps me to connect the dots forward instead of connecting backwards. It helps me to move through it. So it kind of like, instead of looking back, okay, let's look forward. Why is this here?
Yeah.
Instead of looking back and going, oh, that's why I went there. That's why I met David in
Mhm.
Houston during it kind of like has something show up for in things, and how they work. So it's important to, yeah, to do the work, to look internally, to keep the movement, to keep the healing work going. I don't necessarily prescribe to always being in shadow work either, which can be sometimes people tend to kind of like, oh, I'm always in shadow and really doing the hard work. It shows up when it's needed to show up if we step into observation. I,
Yeah.
I, I believe so. Yeah, yeah.
With our own lives, with our own children, it shows up. It shows up, and you just have to work about yourself, of course, and you just have to do and reflect and be humble and
Hmm.
just say, well, this I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have been
Yeah.
angry, or whatever it is, the emotion that you showed. And I was also thinking about, well, I probably you also experience that when you go in your mornings and you uh, experience the flowers and the
Mm,
different tones of colors that now we are
yeah.
having spring. And when we see those trees and flowers and nature and animals, and we just have some moments to watch them and see how they sing. Sometimes the birds sing different,
Hmm. Yep.
and all of those things are giving you the clues that you also need to catch up with your renewal. You also need to let go of winter, that probably you have some, let's say that people in winter have more shadow work because it's
Hmm.
a season that doesn't have too much energy flow in terms of the high vibrations, and it is more,
Hmm.
let's just label it today for the purpose of this explanation, that it is a lower vibration winter, and that's it. That was your work. Winter is over. Now you have
Hmm.
moved into a spring, and to start raising little by little your emotions, and
Yeah.
to let go of that shadow work,
Hmm.
and keep watching, or being anxious for the future, in terms of being eager, not anxious, let's say
No.
eager, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Getting excited about the future, creating the future in the present is very, very important. Yeah, I think anxious actually came out quite right, because sometimes if we're looking to the future but not planning to get there,
Yeah.
creates anxiety. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So no, no, no. I think that was the right word, but getting excited about it and looking at, yeah, how do we move through that? How do we let what do we need to let go of in order to move forward? I'm actually doing a whole program based on looking at your limiting beliefs and letting go of those limiting beliefs, because those are really our only limitations, is the conformity that we have. And a lot of the times it's subconscious, we don't even know what are the underlying limiting beliefs that we have and why we keep creating the same patterns. So yeah, our minds are so important. Thoughts, fueled by our emotions, put into place by our actions, creates our environment and the world around us.
Yeah, I think it's also very important to identify the patterns and the limitations that sometimes we are uh, creating, because
Mm-hmm.
they are just there because someone else pointed at them and probably programmed you into those kind of thoughts. But whenever you also have time, have some pauses to think, to reflect,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you realize that it it is not in your words, it is not in your system. You acquire it because you were op- no, not open. Let's say you were young, you were naive many times, and you accepted it because
Mm-hmm.
also our first role models, or our first programmers, let's say, are our parents.
Yeah.
And of course, they have their own issues. Of course, they have their own history, and they many times the past generations didn't work too much and didn't have too much time to reflect on what
No.
now is being surfaced now.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have to accept that and just let go of that aspect now.
Absolutely. I think the previous generations, because they had it harder than us in everyday lives, they didn't have the luxury of
No.
moving through the emotions, and so a lot of it was suppressed. And from my perspective, is we choose the families we're born into because of these limitations in order to release them. So our children come to teach us quite a lot as well. I think I've learned as much from my children than that I have taught as well, which is important. But knowing that they chose us because of the lineages, because of the gifts that we have, and because of the limitations that we've had as well. It's They choose us, so that they know what they've come into, and with the mission probably of changing us. I know my one daughter tells me she's going to be a better parent than I will ever be, and I always say to her, I hope so. I hope you're a better parent than I am, because that means that you're
Yes.
improving, right?
Yes.
You're changing things. So yeah, yeah. So I think it's important to allow those changes, to let go of those. This is what it needs to look like, and it's important, because sometimes we look at these are the structures that have worked for me, doesn't necessarily mean that the structures that work for somebody else either.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that we are now in the point to gather everything and to wrap up. And
Mm-hmm.
what I would like to do for this episode is to choose the words that we have in the title, and talk a little bit about that, and just wrapping or having the information. And I say, what does release represents to you?
Release for me represents a few things. It's acceptance,
Hmm.
it's surrender, and it's letting go.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. What does renew represents to you?
Renew represents a clean slate to create whatever it is that I want to create.
Okay, perfect. And letting go, what does it represent?
Freedom. For
Freedom.
me, letting go represents freedom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I I think also release. For me, release represents um to use the motion in my favor and
Hmm.
to um liberate resistance. That represents for me. Use the force
Hmm.
in my own favor, use what happens in my own uh, life. And
Hmm.
that's it. I would say renew represents, as you mentioned, mornings, Mondays, new,
Hmm.
the first day of the month,
Yeah.
every single day that we have an opportunity to have this new movie of our lives, new chapter of our lives,
Hmm.
and finally letting go represents detoxification and balance.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I can say for that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I totally agree.
Thank you.
Completely in alignment.
Thank you, Natasha. And just to remind people, where can they find you? And of course, your new project, your new course. Where can they find information?
So, yeah, just on my website, Raising the Vibes, and it's
Okay.
part of a conscious academy development subscription that I have. So every month I teach a workshop, which is an hour and a half, and then I'm running this 21-day releasing the limiting beliefs uh, program that's starting on the 1st of May, actually. But either way, it will be recorded and will be in
Yeah.
the program anyway, so even if it's missed. But yeah, absolutely. And it's to release those limiting beliefs. And then I've also got a YouTube channel that has tons of meditations on there that help to journal and get to know who we are through the Akashic records as well.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Natasha.
you.
Everyone for listening. And of course, you know that we encourage questions, opinions, and of course, sharing this information for all your family members, your friends, and your wall, let's say. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for
Bye.
having me. Bye bye.